All right, beautiful people. On this episode of the Silicon Valley to Spirituality Show, I have a good friend, Kenya Alexander, joining the show. We met when she was a cannabis accountant and is now moving on to a cannabis-themed stationery business. And during this conversation, we explore the important balance between authenticity, the influence plant medicines have had in our life, and how to balance the professional demands of your life while staying true to yourself. So a lot of really profound insights on spirituality, professional growth, what is going on in the evolving cannabis industry. And this is such an inspiring conversation that I wanted to share with you. So without further ado, let's jump into the podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Silicon Valley to Spirituality Show. This week I have a very exciting guest. It's my good friend, Kenya Alexander. Kenya, welcome to the show.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Oh, man, I love seeing your smile. I love seeing all the pictures on LinkedIn of you smiling and having a great time. And before we jump into today's conversation, can you just give the audience just a brief introduction to who you are, what you do, and how we ended up here today?
Yeah, so I'm Kenya. I always start with I'm a mom. I have three beautiful children, which is actually how I started using cannabis because they stressed me out. um, but I got in the industry. I was doing cannabis accounting, and I recently made a huge shift to start a weed themed stationery business. Um, just because it just didn't feel like accounting was in line with my life. I always say everywhere I got, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I had no accounting background when I first got hired as a corporate accountant, and I didn't lie. I didn't lie to them. They just hired me. And from there, kind of shifted. I saw that people were doing cannabis accounting. I didn't know that that was like a reality for people. So I immediately was like, yes, like that's where I want to be. And that's where I really have been able to find community and uh, really become more of myself, even though cannabis accounting has not been the right fit for me in this phase of my life. I am so grateful for the industry for really just welcoming me to show up as my full self. It's been such an experience.
That's I think that's one of the things that really resonated with me. Just reading a lot of your posts, seeing you really come into yourself. Like I never really thought of you as someone that was holding back. Like I always thought you were presenting yourself as Kenya Alexander. But as I read more and more, I realized, oh wait, she's starting to show more of herself. And I didn't know that. I always thought you were like a finance person in college. I had no idea that accounting was a new thing to you. And I really, even this like little extra wrinkle to the story is really interesting to me that, you got the interview, you didn't lie, you still got the job. I very much believe that, skill set aside, at least the way that I hire, like being in a matching frequency and vibration is very, very important. And one of the things that you said early on when I first met you, and I didn't think of this as something negative, and I've heard you say it again, was like you would say, I just don't want to work hard. And, I
Yeah.
never took it as like, I'm not here to not put in effort, but the way that I took it as was like, I'm not going to like grind and like sacrifice like all the other aspects of my life just for work. So maybe we could start our conversation here. Was I correct in that assumption, or were you actually saying I don't want to work hard?
No, it's actually I always have to like because I say that a lot, and I was thinking the other night like people don't have a lot of context to what I mean when I say I don't want to work hard. I've spent my whole life working hard to be someone who I'm not, who doesn't really fit in with me and what I want to do and all of the dreams that I see for my life. And so I don't want to work hard trying to be this person that I'm not, right? Trying to be this imagined image of me in order to kind of conform to society's standards, right? And honestly, I don't want to work that hard. I don't want to be grinding. It's just exhausting to me. I don't have a lot of energy reserves. So like what I spend my energy on, and I don't have a lot of energy reserves, and I also don't know how to do things half-assed. So it's just like I have to pick and choose the things that I show up for, because when I show up for those things, it's going to be me giving my full effort. And so I guess that's kind of what I mean. It's like I don't want to work hard trying to build an image that someone else deems appropriate.
Yeah, I love that. And the really interesting thing that you said that I super resonated with was, I myself, very similar to you. I have like a limited gas tank every day. I know what it is. When I was younger, I was willing to just like drain the gas tank and then just put in whatever fuel was necessary to keep going. But then there's this other side of me that just doesn't like half-ass stuff. So I
Hmm.
totally can understand this. Like, hey, I know I have limited energy, but when I do stuff, I go all in on it. So, how do I really prioritize? What are the most important things? And, for me, one of the things that I think really connected me to you was on LinkedIn. And this is not to knock anyone that's like really trying to build their brand on LinkedIn, but there's like, everyone has like a certain like archetype or personality on LinkedIn. And what I really appreciate about yours is like sometimes it's professional, sometimes you're just showing your home life, sometimes you're getting really raw and authentic with what you're going through. And what I really appreciate about that is like, for people that have like a much more procured LinkedIn image, many of these people, I know them outside of their LinkedIn image. And as I said, no knock against them, but I just know like, hey, you're only showing people like a certain side of you. And for me,
Hmm.
I feel like I try to do what you're doing, which is I just show like the multidimensional aspects of myself. Like I rarely write about like my work. I'm just sharing like, hey, I did date night or this is what I did with my kids. And I'm just curious, like was this I don't want to ask like was this like a strategy or how did you kind of choose like what to share on LinkedIn?
I honestly, so someone was like, just do it consistently, share consistently. And for a while, I tried to curate what I shared. And I was like, okay, on this day, I'll share accounting tips. On this day, I'll do this. On this day, and it was just like exhausting. And I think that if I had continued that path, I would have just stopped showing up because it was literally draining me. And so I figured I could just be myself and then see what happens, right? I can build those skills, even if it's not well received by LinkedIn, even if it's not the algorithm doesn't push it forward. I don't need a huge audience, right? The whole reason why I'm putting my signals out, why I'm being myself on the internet, is to attract the people who I need to attract. And it doesn't need to be everybody. And so when I kind of release that pressure on myself to show up on LinkedIn to sell something or to show up on LinkedIn to display my skills in accounting, it really helped draw the people in that I needed to draw in to be where I'm at, right? I don't know if I would have realized that accounting was not for me if I kept putting out accounting stuff and I kept getting clients and I kept building that business. Maybe it would have been a lot harder to shift to this new place. But since I'm not really super known for accounting, right? It just made the shift that much easier. I'm known for being me, right? If when people come to my page, you expect Kenya to be there, and it doesn't have to be like this professional image or this business growing thing. To me, LinkedIn is just fun. I use it like an online diary in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I really love that attitude. And there's so many different directions I feel like this conversation could go, like I'm very interested in talking a little bit about like your shift from accounting and having the courage to just shift, like I know how challenging it is. And then the other part is, really talking about like how much effort it is to like procure a certain image. I'm a huge believer in the best way to connect with people is just being yourself. And I can only speak for myself as a former founder and entrepreneur. There was Seibo at home, and then there was like this professional side and this certain type of presentation that, just observing other like professional speakers that I tried to emulate. And like you, I found it extremely exhausting. And when I made the decision to intentionally just show up as myself, um, initially the response wasn't very positive, like I'd be like, "Hey, I spent like an hour writing this thing and there's like 2 likes and the likes are like by my 2 friends that like everything that I write," and just wondering like, "Hey, is this the right thing or wrong thing?" But deep down, I just felt like this is what I should be sharing. This is what feels important to me. And then slowly but surely, I just started seeing that like, oh, okay, there was a certain type of person that was expecting like this more buttoned up version of Sabo. And then now there's like, I think we share a lot of the same audience, to be honest. When I look at your post and my post, it's like, oh wait, we started attracting people that are really real and authentic, and I think is much more in a resonance with like where we're at. And so I just wanted to kind of vocalize that because I think it's important for people to hear. In an age where like the amount of followers and the metrics and the vanity conversions or whatever it may be, being so important, it's like, well, are we losing our humanity by trying to game the algorithm?
Yeah, I think that's the thing is I've been trying to get more into social media off of LinkedIn. I think I've really found my voice on LinkedIn and now I want to kind of put it out to other communities. And so I've been taking like all of these, like taking a couple courses, watching YouTube videos on like the algorithm and the how to hack the algorithm and all of these things. And I had to like stop watching because I think ultimately, yes, we want that reach. And yes, there are certain aspects of it that you can use to extend that reach, but I just don't wanna have to think about it that much, right? I think that I have a message that I wanna put out, and I truly just believe, like, the right people are always going to find me. I don't have to play these games necessarily to get the right people to find me. I've my friend makes fun of me when I say this, but bad things don't happen to me. Only good things happen to me. And so, if I feel like I have to play the system in order to say what I need to say. Like, maybe I just need to find a new system to work with, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah, I love that. I often think about my favorite musicians growing up were Outkast, and so I often think about like, all right, they were only like 1 year older than me, like when they came out with their album in high school, and I was like, wow, these guys are a year older than me, but they don't sound like kid rappers. They sounded like full on adult rappers to me. And I often think, were Andre 3000 and Big Boy, were they ever thinking like, how do I game the algorithm didn't exist there, but in my mind, they're like, no, we're just gonna write like what we want to talk about and what we want to express about ourselves. And you know, I've done the same thing as you, which is I bought a bunch of courses. I watched so many videos on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and there are all these like tricks on like hashtags, hooks at the beginning, how you write your titles. But what I've come to the conclusion of is if the content you're putting out just isn't interesting or connecting with people, it doesn't matter like all these little tricks. Like you have to be like a
Exactly.
good creator that could connect. And so that's kind of what I've been double downing on. And so I really appreciate what you shared, but the one thing that you said that really stood out to me, and I think this is kind of where we'll get into a little bit more spirituality, is you said, bad things don't happen to me. Can you go a little bit deeper into this
You
ideology?
know, I've always been like, when my friends think of where my life would be at, I'm one of my few friends who have kids. I'm one of my few friends who's married. And this was never the trajectory for me. Like I was supposed to be somewhere wild. If we go out together, I might disappear. Who knows? But they would be, and then my friends at some point they stopped looking for me. Right? They would be like, "She's okay," because I told them like I'm always safe. I'm protected. There is like a protection around me. I don't know how to explain it, but I am blessed beyond measure. And so bad things don't happen to me. Anything that happens to me is it's for my greater good. Right. And I think every time I go through and there's some days that are really dark where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this is working. I don't know where I'm supposed to be, but I'm there, right? I'm in this place. And so I know that it's gonna work out for all the best. And I've had that attitude as long as I can remember, and it's working, right? it's working. Bad things just don't happen to me. I don't know. I don't know how else to even explain it. I'm just blessed.
Yeah. Oh man, this is awesome. Um, you know, what I really love about what you just talked about was, um, I believe that there are some people that they they have this same kind of thought process as what you just explained. Like everything is happening, for my highest good. But when I observe their behavior, I look at it as a little bit of like spiritual bypassing. Like something bad happens and they're like, well, I shouldn't think negatively about it. I'm just going to pretend, everything's positive and I'm just going to act happy. And, I respect that type of mentality, but I also believe that yeah, like many people instead of like really feeling what's going on will just kind of think about the spiritual concept that this is for my greatest good and like suppress the emotion. And so I 100% and aligned with you. I do not believe anything bad happens to me, but at the same time I also acknowledge like when I'm going through something, I could absolutely feel it as negative, as anxiety, as feeling lost or feeling hopeless. But at the same time, I know that once I'm feeling or once I'm done feeling those things and I start processing and thinking about, well, why did this happen to me? What did I learn from it? And then I could totally see like it was happening for my highest good. And at least for me, I think the story that I've shared with people is, I was politely asked to leave the company that I founded. And, I also could pick up that while they were asking politely, I didn't have an option of staying,
Mhm.
and in many ways, I had understood this concept that this was happening for my greatest good, but going through it, it was horrible. And
Mhm.
there was part of me that was just wanting to focus on, well, now I can meditate more. Now I can go on to the next project. But I noticed that like there was a part of me that was like really hurt from being asked to leave my company. And I had to address that part of me. And so I'm curious as you are leaving or closing one door and opening another door, did you have to, like, kinda say goodbye to accounting Kenya?
So it's so funny because I'm still working in accounting right now. But let me just share this. My daughter the other day, my 5-year-old, she loves flowers, and I buy fresh flowers every week, and she always asks me for a flower, and I'm always like, no. But this day, she was like, can I just have one petal from the rose? And I was like, sure. And I gave her a petal, and she was like, oh, that's not the right color. That's not the one I wanted. And I was like, you should be grateful that you got a petal. And she was like, I am grateful for this petal, but it's still not the one I wanted. And I was like, wow, you know what? That's actually so important to realize is that you can be grateful and still want something different, right? You can be grateful for what's in front of you and still understand that this is not what you wanted. This was not the image that you had created in your mind. And the little ones are so wise without even knowing it, or maybe they do know it and we just don't know it. But it was just a message that like in every transition, yes, we're grateful for the transition, but it's still hard. I was telling you before we got on this call that I was a little bit stressed because there's still so much I'm trying to wrap up this accounting portion of my life and it's not wrapping, right? It's not wrapping. Because I have clients who the people who I work with, I truly, truly deeply care about them and I care about their businesses and I want them to be successful. So sometimes it's hard to shift when there's still other people here who you care about and you want to help. And so it's been an interesting transition trying to move forward. But I'm taking my time and I'm just taking it as it goes, but it has been kinda difficult. It has been kinda difficult.
Mm. You know, man, your was it your daughter you said that made that comment? Oh, man, like, I love learning from children. They just say like such wonderful things. And, you know, I had an epiphany um, probably in the last 3 months about the importance of paradoxes in our life and why being able to hold a paradox in your mind will really free you of a lot of mental anxiety. And I think this is like a really great example, which is like, hey, I am really grateful for this, but I still want something more, and I think in at least, in the spiritual circles that I run in, it's like some people are like, well, we should just release all connection or attachment to material items and just, be this like very grounded person. And in many ways, I feel like, well, that might have worked a long time ago when you were just sitting on the top of a mountain meditating all the time, but we live in a different society now. And it just, to me, doesn't seem like practical, like to just shift my lifestyle this way. But I do believe that, the lesson that your daughter had taught and the one that I was receiving was that, yeah, you can absolutely be feeling grateful and abundant for what you have right now, but still have a desire for more. And so, yeah, I just love that, like I feel like, wow, it took me 47 years to realize this. And then a child.
And she knows it
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now,
How cool is
right?
that?
Well, and it's always just for me, it, this weird, because I live in my head a lot of the times. A lot of the times I'm perfectly content. I have a little egg chair swing thing. I'm perfectly content to sit there for hours and watch the clouds move by. But I also live in this reality. Like my physical body is in this reality where there are clothes to wash. I got to pick up kids from school. There's work to be done. There's money to be made. And so it's always just like this just juxtaposition against like my dream world and my reality world, and kind of getting those to finding middle ground with those things, right? Because my head moves really fast and reality doesn't always catch up to it in the time that I'm moved on to the next thing. So it has been such a relief and help grounding in meditation. Like every time I feel myself like spiraling, I'm like, okay, we just need to sit down for a minute and just breathe and ground yourself, because it is almost like we're living in various worlds where reality shifting every moment to moment. And so to be present, it takes a lot of intention sometimes.
Oh, I love that. I love that you said we're shifting realities moment to moment. In one of my meditations, that's exactly what I saw was kind of like where y- where you put your attention is the reality that you experience. And I used to think of this as more just like a metaphor. Okay, if you're in a bad mood, of course you just kind of experience things like a little bit more negative. And when you're optimistic, everything just looks a little bit brighter, smells a little bit better. But as I get deeper into my spiritual practice, I no longer look at this as like a metaphor. I look at this as like, no, there's actually, there was a movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once. And it was,
Love that
yeah,
movie.
yeah. And I was very curious about the title. And they were talking about like, well, at least some scientists believe that everything that has ever happened and everything that will ever happen is all happening simultaneously in the present moment across infinite parallel realities. And it really got me thinking about I mean, one only needs to look at global politics to know like, oh, whoa, there's at least like two separate worlds that people are living in, but these two separate worlds also seem to like overlap with each other. And so I wanted to like kind of meditate, well, like if we're all generating our own reality, why does it seem like we're like in this reality together? And like the vision that it gave me was that, if you just think about like radio stations, they all exist overlapping each other, but depending on which frequency you're tuned into, that's the type of music that you have access to. And I see you nodding your head. So yeah, I'm just kind of curious, what are your thoughts in this area?
So I recently read a book. It's called "What If This Is Heaven," and I can't remember the author's name, but she's a Middle Eastern woman who wrote this book, and she talks about like her experience, like growing up being a woman in this culture where it just felt like she couldn't get out. Like she had like extreme issues with like confidence. But anyway, she talks in the book, she talks about like this tapestry that is all of reality, right? And we're just each a little thread in the tapestry. And so we're going through and playing our part in what it means to build this reality. We can kind of see some of the other threads next to us and we see what they're doing and we can kind of adapt to what they're doing and follow their flows all the time. But we can't see the big picture. We can't see how our small thread really contributes to this whole work of art. And so sometimes it's easy to focus only on our part and think that's the world when there's this so many other things going on all the time at the same time to build this one beautiful picture. We just only see our part of the picture. And so it is always, to me, so interesting. I say often, this is not real. Reality is not real. And that is because it is so fragile, right? Perspectives make reality. And so many different things can shift your perspective just a little bit to change your reality completely. And so to me, it's just this fragile thing that doesn't actually exist, but we're living here. So it does actually exist, but like it's so malleable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I first saw The Matrix, like that immediately resonated with me, and I do believe Everything Everywhere All at Once is like this generation's version of The Matrix. And I became aware as I was studying quantum physics that at this point, we know that physical reality is not base reality. Molecules, atoms, it's all empty space. And how these physical items are actually constructed, for all we know, this like headphone that I'm holding is like the atoms and molecules that make up this that make it look like a headphone. It could be just like how like these pixels on our screen make up like Kenya or Seibo. It looks like we're looking at a certain thing, but the pixels aren't actually you, just like the atoms and molecules might actually not be this. And so when I started seeing like, wow, physicists have already like seen that 3D reality isn't base reality, kind of letting us know like we're in some form of a matrix. And when I was meditating on this, I was like, well, if this is like all a matrix or an illusion, like, well, what's the point? And what I received back was like, "Mm, physical reality may be an illusion, but the experience of it is absolutely real. So just like you wouldn't, like you would know, like, okay, hey, if this is all fake, why don't I just step in front of a train and, like just start over? It's like, well, yeah, like you could do that, but the experience is real. The ramifications for the other people in this Maya or illusion or matrix will also be affected by this. And it really kind of like gave me this idea like, okay, like I don't have to take it as seriously as I was taking it before, but I still have to take it seriously. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's sometimes it's small reminders to me of how just made up this is. I'll give you a small example. I was going to a wedding and my dress was too big. And so I needed some safety pins. And we happened to be at the grocery store and I was looking for the safety pins. They didn't have any safety pins at this particular grocery store. So we were going to go all the way to another store and I looked across the street and what jumped out to me is a laundry, like a cleaners that I pass every day. I'd never really noticed, like I knew it was there, but I never really noticed it. And I was like, you know what? Let's stop at that cleaners. Maybe they have a safety pin that I can use. And so my husband like rushes across the street, goes into the parking lot for the cleaners, and I'll walk into the cleaners, and the guy is literally sitting there with a container of safety pins on the front counter. Like, it was just like, it was ready. I don't know. I don't go to cleaners a lot, but I don't think that they usually just have safety pins sitting on the front counter. And so I was like, oh, wow, this is great. You were waiting for me. Please have two of those safety pins. And he was like, sure. And it was just like, then we were done. And I was like, I think that's why I was like, wow, that's crazy. Wow, we can really kind of make some of this stuff up. Like this is something that we can kind of shift if we want to. But I don't even know what your question was, but Yeah.
There wasn't. We were just free flowing, just talking. Um, but one thing that did stick out to me was you talked about, okay, how do I reconcile this kind of idealistic world that I could live in my head and then balance that out with, the day-to-day things of, for me, I remember one time I had well, shit, I'm just gonna say it. I did like a DMT trip like right before I sold like Girl Scout cookies, Um, not cannabis Girl Scout cookies, but actual Girl Scout
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
cookies. And I was just thinking, wow, like 20 minutes ago, I was like in the 12th dimension. And then now I'm here selling, snickerdoodles and Samoas and stuff. And yeah, I'm always curious, like meeting someone else like yourself, an entrepreneur that has like deep spiritual connections. Like, yeah, how do you kind of reconcile those two worlds?
You know what? It has taken a lot because before I started using plant medicine, I was going crazy. I had no idea where I was supposed to be. It was more like I was just not grounded in this reality. So it felt like I always wanted to be somewhere other than where I was. And so I actually it was fine. I was doing okay, like until I became a mother. And it was just that added stress of like taking care of people and, like, actually keeping them alive. And so I started using cannabis and I started microdosing shrooms, and it kinda it while some people, like we talk about getting high, like, I'm already just, like, a naturally high person, like, that is just who I am. I live in the clouds, and so what plant medicine has done for me is kinda brought me a little bit more into reality, right? A little bit more able to reconcile my thoughts with what is actually here right in front of me. And so it's I use cannabis every day. I use it all the time, like when I'm with my kids, when I'm not with my kids, because it really does help me exist in this space and time where my natural inclination is to like wave in the air and kind of flow where life flows. It keeps me grounded.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I really love even kind of like the use of terminology that you use, which was like, yeah, like people talk about like getting high, but like these plant medicines actually help ground me. And yeah, I mean, I totally empathize with you about having a child. I was like, whoa, like now I have like it's like 24/7 keeping this thing alive. And it was
Yeah.
extremely I just remember looking at my wife like, "Whoa, we're about to go to the hospital and it's about to be on for the next 18 years?" And yeah, so I really appreciate that. And when you talked about, kind of just, waving and being up there in these higher frequencies and the plant medicine's grounding you, immediately I just got this visual of like, yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, these things are growing from the root, from the earth, and the roots are really deep in there. And, I believe that there was a relationship between humans and these plants and how it helps kind of like expand our consciousness. And so, I think you had mentioned, so you had not been a cannabis user prior to having children. So this was something.
No, I did not like to get high. I tried it a few times. It's so funny. I've always been just attracted to the plant, right? So like all of my friends smoked weed. Everyone I knew, I hung out with the weed man. I hung out like it was just always around me, but it was just like maybe sometimes I would dabble, but not something I was really interested in because I would freak out when I got high. Like I would just not know what exactly is it I'm supposed to be doing here. And I had like all of these expectations, I guess, for how it would feel or how it should feel, or should I be laughing? I, and that goes back to, I think so much of my life has been spent trying to think about who it is I'm supposed to show up as, right? Like, if I do this thing, like, how is it that I should be showing up in these places? And I would kind of adapt to that. I'm a very adaptable person. I can fit in anywhere because that's how I've had to function my whole life is just putting on this mask. And so when I would use cannabis, because I wasn't using it as my true self. I was using it like because my friends were doing it. I didn't really have a relationship with the plant. It just did not react with my body well because I wasn't in there. I wasn't in there. And so like when I started using cannabis as a mother, I didn't smoke with anyone. I smoked by myself. I took a couple of hits. I was never like I would start it with like a couple of hits, like, okay, this can be used as a tool. I see the motivation behind this. But it took me a while to get to a point where I could consume socially.
Wow. Wow. That is so interesting that in a certain phase of your life, energetically, it wasn't the right match. And then after becoming a mother, it was in the right frequency, but you had always had this interest in the plant at the same time. And so, what I'm curious about is, do you think it would have been easy for you to decide to transition to your new project if you didn't have this connection to something greater than yourself?
You know what? No. The simple answer to that is no, because even now I had some tension about moving on because to me, like an accountant is smart, right? Like people think an accountant is smart and I want people to think that I'm smart. So maybe I should stay here because if I leave, that's just saying I'm not smart and I can't do this. So there's always that resistance. It's something that I have to kind of reconcile on a daily basis is understanding all the past versions of me. They are very important, but showing up as myself is the most important thing. Showing up as myself today, regardless of the expectations that people may have of me to be this other person who I've shown up as before. I don't blame the people for expecting me to show up in that way because that's how I've done it in the past. But I have to put myself first and say, okay, who is it that I want to be and what is valuable to me and what means a lot to me? And are these things that I'm telling myself actually true, right? Like, is it true that if I'm not an accountant, I'm not smart? No, that's not true. Like, there are so many different ways to be an intelligent being. Accounting is not the only way, but it is a struggle each day to choose to show up as me because I've spent the last 30, how old am I? But I'll be 33 this year. Like, I have to look at the calendar. I spent the last 33 years just pretending to be other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Man, there were so many things that I was kind of trying to keep track of in my mind because there were so many things that I wanted to unpack. But I think the main theme of what I heard that really resonated with me was, spending a large portion of your life as someone else and then now feeling more comfortable just being you. And, one of the things that really came up in a lot of my meditations was, Sabo, you are worthy. Sabo, you are worthy. And in my mind, I was like, no shit, I'm worthy. Like, I know this. And, but it just kept coming in these meditations, like, you're worthy, you're worthy. And then I started asking myself, like, why does this come up all the time? And then I realized I didn't believe I was worthy. All of my achievements, all of my willingness to sacrifice my time, my health, my relationships to do this, that, or the other, to be interviewed here, to speak there. It wasn't coming from a place of like, oh, I'm whole and complete and I want to go speak and share my knowledge. It was always coming from what you were talking about was like, oh, if someone sees me speaking at South by Southwest, or if someone sees an article written by Forbes or Business Insider, they will know I'm worthy. And that's when I realized, whoa, I actually do not believe I'm worthy. And this is why I'm so like willing to just do whatever is necessary. And I think this is just a great reminder. I feel like you just saying that was a good reflection to remind myself that I am worthy regardless of any of these external accomplishments. And I hope the people listening here, like it's resonating at this deeper level where I'm hoping like you guys are all asking yourself this question of like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I posting what I'm posting? Is this actually in alignment with what I really want to do? Or is this in alignment with this idea of what I believe, will bring me happiness? And so I'm super happy that you recognize, like, okay, there's this other part of me. She needed to exist, and that's okay because she got me to this version. I really love that philosophy of like transcending and then integrating the previous version of yourself versus transcending and rejecting the previous version of yourself. And so, yeah, like, can you give us like a little bit more details of like, yeah, how did this shift happen? And then what was like the catalyst to be like, all right, like I'm ready to move on to this thing that is more in alignment with what Kenya Alexander actually wants to do.
You know what's so funny? Everything I do is in alignment with me for that time, right? Everything I do gets me to the place that I want to. But I think the biggest shift happened, and this is going to sound crazy, but my husband is the one of the best things that has ever happened to me. My husband is a very grounded person. He lives in reality. He is focused on exactly what's in front of him. It's so completely opposite from who I am and how I show up in the world, but it has been the best thing. So we were actually watching the challenge, and I don't know if you watched the challenge, but I love the challenge. I've watched it since forever. And there was a girl in the challenge, and she found out that she was like she found out she was autistic as a grown up. And I was telling my husband, like, yeah, like that's crazy. Imagine like going and just for reference, she was she identified as a Black woman, right? And so she found out like after all of this time she was actually autistic. And I was like, that is insane. Like I can imagine like finding out like I was autistic as a grown up. And then I'm like, babe, like I think that you might be autistic. Like I think I'm telling my husband, like, I think you're autistic. And so I started going through, like, I get on the internet because that's how I am. Like, I will hyper focus on things. And so I'm like reading like all of these things, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is describing me, not you. Like, what do you mean? Like, wait. And so I like take a step back and I'm like, wait a minute. So your brain doesn't do A, B, and C. Like you don't do this. This is not how everyone is thinking. And I think just figuring out that like I thought that like everyone was going through the same internal thinking struggles that I was going through the same and mind you, everyone is going through their own things. And this is not to discount anyone's experience. We're all on the same page in how we think. And so to find out that to kind of figure out that like, oh wow, your brain works a little bit differently. I think that that was the first time that I like accepted like, okay, that's okay. So that it gave me almost the freedom to be like, okay, your brain works differently and that's okay. Let's figure out how we can balance how your brain works with the places that you want to be in this reality. Like you don't have to you don't have to make your brain work a different way than than it does in order to get the things that you want to achieve. And I think that that was the first step that I took in really like accepting myself as who I am. And really like from there I just was like, okay, let's show up as yourself in this place. Let's show up as yourself and it got so, it felt so good. It felt so amazing that at this point, if I can't be me, I just don't want to be there. If I don't have this freedom and the space to be myself, that's just not for me and it's okay.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. In one of my meditations, I asked the question, what is the most spiritual thing that you could do? And so I thought maybe it would say, I don't know, sound healing, vipassanas, meditate. And what it told me was the most spiritual thing you could do is to be yourself. That's why we incarnated here, is to be yourself. And I was like, whoa, that seems so obvious. Yet that was like the last answer that I thought I was going to get. And what I really love about like the way language evolves is like, I think just having like the word neurodivergent, or neurospicy is what I've seen some people listed as. I think like it's super powerful because growing up, literally every doctor that I've seen was like, "Hey, have you been diagnosed for ADHD?" And ADHD and autism have like a pretty close link as I started doing more studies on it. And it just I don't want to say like we're trailblazers, but I do believe that part of our purpose of like why we're even here talking and sharing about this is I know that I observed like I guess neurotypical people and was like, okay, this is the way you're supposed to be. This is the formula for success and let's go do it. Let's go do it. And I think I've had the benefit. I've coached 288 people in the last 3 years. The vast majority of them founders or entrepreneurs or senior level executives, and what I found is like a, a high percentage of them are very similar to us, but then they also believe that there is a proper way to present and show up in the world. And I'm a huge advocate of just like what you said. It's like you shouldn't have to show up as anything else other than yourself. And it is so draining to be something that you're not. And I believe that when you are who you are, yes, you will still have challenging moments, but you will totally see like each of these challenging moments was there for you to become more of yourself. And when you're in a challenging moment and you have to go into like untraveled or uncharted territory, the one thing that you will find for sure is more of yourself.
Absolutely. And actually, I feel like the world has been prepping for this whole like emergence of neurodivergent people for a while. It reminds me of the book series, a movie series, Divergent,
Mm.
right? Where she takes that test and she thinks she handles it in a completely different way than what all the other categories handle. And like she has to like run for her life because they're trying to get rid of all the divergent people. Because if people start thinking differently, it will create a whole new society. If people start showing up as who they are and with all their quirks and everything, it shifts society. So I think that showing up as yourself is the most powerful, not only life changing, but world changing thing that you can do because it also welcomes others to show up as themselves as well.
Yeah, yeah, I love that you brought that up. I literally watched like those series of movies with my daughters just a few months ago, so I have a reference point to that. And it is, as you said, historically, like those that thought differently, good things didn't happen to them. Like they were, I think, at a minimum, just kind of maybe ostracized, and then on the extreme end of the things, like drowned and, like witches were like, "Hey, well, if you drown, you weren't a witch. If you don't
You
if you don't drown,
you
yeah,
are, and
yeah.
we got to kill you anyway.
Yeah, yeah." And, I've often this is my belief, but I believe it is true, is that I often one of my friends is a Hollywood writer, and I ask him, like, why do you choose what you write about? And many times he'll respond to me like, what I've heard like musicians talk about is like, I just woke up in the middle of the night. I got this idea for Billie Jean or whatever song, and I just wrote it really quick, and it's like this hit. And so I started getting this idea that like these writers of pop medium, whether it's movies, TVs, or music, they're like tapping into something greater, and they're more or less like helping us like get ready for like the next phase. Like, when I was younger,
Absolutely.
lots of AI movies. Now I believe like a lot of the movies that I see right now are like talk about like multiple timelines, alternate dimensions. And I do believe like this is like prepping like the collective consciousness to just get ready for this next phase. And I think that movie Divergent is a great um just kind of like, hey, maybe it seems scary to have these different thoughts, but society needs to shift. And another thing that you said, sorry, like, I know I'm interviewing you and here I am going on a long monologue.
I love this. Please.
is that you talked about every decision that you made, it was right for that version of Kenya Alexander. And to me, I feel like that is such a important thing to discuss because I hear a lot of people, like the people that I coach, oh man, but I spent 7 years doing this, so attached to that. Or they have this epiphany like, wow, I was like so concerned with external material goods. Like, I do not like that previous version of me. But I very much see, like, well, all of these were required for us to get to this point. And really loving that previous version. I like to think like when I'm really struggling, I like to meditate and tap into my higher self, and my higher self will communicate something to me that makes me feel better. And many times when I'm feeling like, oh man, there's like some unprocessed trauma from my youth, I try to go into a meditative state and then become the higher self for that younger version of myself that is existing in another reality. And then I feel like as I heal that version and send this good energy to like this current version of me starts like healing too. And yeah, I love like, I mean, I've said this to other people and they're doing the exact opposite of you, The head's
They're
going
like,
like this, the eyes are rolling and they're just like getting ready to interrupt me, but I always tell them like, like for me, like how I started like getting to higher levels of consciousness was to stop processing everything through my brain and to just start like receiving it through like my heart and just like allowing that like experience to override this need for intellectual understanding. And so I just really appreciate being able to share this time with you and
you
just
know,
riffing on this.
it's so funny. I think about it like time traveling, right? They say if you go back in time and you change something, it completely shifts the reality for everyone involved. So if you going back in time and healing that past version, the version of yourself, of course it shifts your reality in this because you've time traveled at that point. You've gone back and you made a different reality for this little version of you, which created a completely different version of who you are.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that because one of the things that have been coming up in my meditations a lot is that the present or the past doesn't create the present. And I was like, whoa, this doesn't even make sense. But the what we just discussed was like, yeah, the present moment could recreate the past. And, you know, what I wanted to share with you was so I was like, well,
Wow, that's great. I'm sorry. That was like my mind is blown. That was a gym. Okay, keep
okay.
going. I'm sorry.
So what I was when I was meditating on this, it was showing me like I have connections to all of these like various versions of Seibo. And so what they were showing me was like there's this concept called the time travel paradox, which is like if Kenya and Sabo, if we make a time machine in 2024, we go back in time to, let's say, 1970, we prevent my parents from ever meeting. So I'm never born. So who creates the time machine with Kenya in 2024? And so how it was explained to me, or what it was shown to me in my meditation was that, yeah, if we think about like right now, you and I, we're in timeline A, is that when we travel back in time, we're actually not going back in time in timeline A. We're actually traveling to a alternate timeline. Let's call it timeline Z, where my parents are 25 and 22, and 1970 is the present moment. And so we prevent them from ever meeting. So in timeline Z, Sabo does not exist. But in timeline A, where we built the time machine, there's full continuity, and because I have connections to this alternate timeline, is like I could experience like something like deja vu, like a experience that they had
Mhm.
that I'm currently experiencing. Or in the example that I shared with you, where I'm acting as a higher self for a previous version of me, is that I could heal that previous version, be connected to that version of me, and then heal myself in the present moment here.
I think it's always so interesting to me to think about. I was a chemistry major in college, and so I love science. I just really do, and so it always energy is never created or destroyed. It only just changes form, and that's the same thing, right? If it our energy can't end. So even if you go to that other timeline and stop your parents from meeting, you just manifested yourself in a different way,
Mhm.
right? You may not have manifested yourself as the child of your parents, but your energy is still there and it does still affect all of the things.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting is I did a past life regression earlier this year, and the life that I went to, I was like kind of like this, like I don't know if you've ever seen Zootopia, but the one of the lead characters is this fox. I looked just like that
Yeah.
character, except I was wearing like medieval like gear and stuff, so it was like a different timeline. And when I came out of it, I asked the past life regressionist, I go, how come so many people they like reincarnate as like Cleopatra or Leonardo da Vinci or Marcus Aurelius or someone famous? And then she was like, well, just think about it, this way, like in Avatar, like Cleopatra's like avatar, it could be experienced by multiple spirits. So multiple people have experienced that experience of Cleopatra, and you just happen to go into this kind of humanoid looking fox creature. And that really kind of like blew my mind open of like, wow, oh, okay, so there's a spirit inhabiting this human life form of Kenya, but there could be absolutely another spirit that gets to experience that same formation of atoms, molecules, and neurotransmitters that are within Kenya and have that experience of Kenya. And it just kind of like, I had always thought, okay, hey, no, my spirit's in this body. This is like what my spirit gets to experience. And then now it's like, oh, wait, there may be alternate timelines where there's like another spirit that is occupying this Seibo meat vehicle, having like their version of the experience. And it really just kind of like made me so much more open to the possibilities of what reality is. And I think just to kind of do a callback to our earlier part of the conversation of like, okay, like I should take this seriously, but it's not like my one and only quarter or token to play this video game of life.
I think it's always to me so interesting to think because I just think now I think everyone is just a reflection of you, right? Like so the people that you invite in your life or that are in your life or whatever at whatever capacity they're in, they're really just a reflection of of your energy that you're putting off, like the energy that you're putting off in. So if you treat them with love and kindness, it's really just treating yourself with love and kindness. If you treat them harshly or with malice or whatever, then you're treating yourself that same way because while we came to experience this version, like we came to separate ourselves so we can have this particular experience, at the end of the day, we're all so connected and we're all just one energy that is experiencing itself over and over and over.
Yeah, yeah, I love that we're one energy experiencing itself over and over and over again. And I think that, when we think about, I mean, I don't really keep up with politics, but I see enough of politics online to have a pretty good understand or a decent understanding of what's going on. And I always think about this. What you just said is if we can see someone with different political views as us, like a differentiated version of us, and treat them with the same openness and respect, you know, I believe that we could totally rebuild the country. And I used to live in San Francisco, hyper progressive. I now live in a rural area. All rural areas are very conservative. And what I found is people are people. There's good and bad people from the city, there's good and bad people here. And, one of the things that I feel like I recognize when I read people's political posts is no matter what side you're on, everyone believes like they have the real information. Everyone believes that what they know is like what would be best for the country. And they just believe that if like the other people that disagree with them, if they had the same data points as them, they would see things the same way as them. And so when I see this, I'm like, oh man, this is everything everywhere all at once. And what I always remember is whatever side of the political party you're on, no one is like pro killing more people pro like more people starving. Everyone wants like a better life for everyone. So for me, that's what I always remember when I'm encountering someone with differing opinions or political views than myself, is to really just see them as myself and to know that like whoever they're fighting for, even if like I can't understand it, is that they're not racist, they're not sheep, they're not snowflakes. They 100% believe that if more people thought like me, the world would be a better place. And if I could remember that, if we could all remember that, I think that the desire to like change someone's mind or to put down their candidate would just start dissolving, and we would start seeing like, we're people here. And I've been really trying to just go off of like instead of reading like what the world is like, just go out and experience what the world is like with my five senses. And, maybe I'm privileged. I don't know, but the way I navigate life, similarly to you, it's like I just meet people that are open, loving, compassionate. Of course, I'm aware of some of the negative things in the world that are happening that I want to help, but it's drastically different than what I feel when I'm constantly just reading about and being told what the world is like versus how I'm actually experiencing the world.
It's so funny because I talked to my husband about this the other day. It's just like sometimes I feel crazy because I don't read the news. I hate politics. I hate politics so much. I find it so exhausting trying to consume all of the information and the way that media portrays it. But I was telling my husband, I was like, sometimes I felt like I'm crazy because everyone's putting out this information in the news, and that's just hasn't been my experience. Like, I don't understand really where they're getting this information from. And that's not to say it's not real experiences, but I just don't have a frame of reference for some of these things. So I'm just like, it 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 it's hard to comprehend. But at the same time, how I approach politics is that I'll never know all of the reasons why people have the perspectives that they have because there's no way I could ever live their whole life experience. So I have to understand that the decisions that people are making are the best interest for them. They see it as the best interest for them, and a lot of times it has nothing to do with me, right? It has nothing to do with me or anyone else. This is them thinking about themselves, and that's okay. That's okay. I want people to make the decisions that they feel are best for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. Um, we got about another 10, 15 minutes here. So I really want to focus on something different here, which is this is my belief. And this is why I was like so excited about your new project is that, when we talked about everything everywhere all at once, and, I always think it's important, like we talked about, like, yes, we're not saying like everything is peaches and creams. We understand that there is some negative stuff going on in the world. But when I kind of zoom out onto like a meta level, I'm like, okay, I believe, I'll say it right here. I believe in our lifetime, aliens are going to make themselves known to us. And our world is just going to be expanded like from this global view to this galactic view to this universal view. So once that happens, it's like, okay, hey, like, are we going to take the weight of the solar system or the galaxy or the universe on our back? Or are we going to focus on like what makes this existence, positive and pleasurable for us? And so I absolutely do believe that some people were incarnated to be freedom fighters, to like really kind of like beat the drum of like, hey, we need this changed. And I believe people like you and me, we're here to like create stuff for people to enjoy, to have a even more expanded experience. And that's why I believe like maybe for us, it's like when we read this stuff, it's like, that doesn't jive with us, and we go create
Right.
stuff. So I just wanted to kind of preface this segue into what you're doing now. You're creating some awesome stuff. Tell us about this genesis. I know that like accounting didn't resonate with you, but how did it go from accounting to cannabis-based stationery or cannabis-influenced
You know,
stationery?
so this is so funny. The reason cannabis accounting was just so serious. And so I was like, the next thing I do, I want it to be like so unserious, so fun, so just when people come to me to find the things that I'm making, I want them to be coming to feel better, to be more positive, not because they're stressed, but because they want a cute sticker, right? And so one of the gaps that I felt like is missing in the cannabis industry is really the connection to community. Really, so my goal with this whole stationery business is to find our people, right? To put out a signal so that people know people who are ordering these stickers, they're probably cannabis users or they're probably believers in plant medicine, right? And so, how can we start to make our industry more about them and less about money and capitalism and all of the serious stuff? How can we get the plant back to where it really should be, which is connection and relationship and positive vibes and helping hands. And so I I had always I wanted to do I am a master shifter, Sabo. I do not mind quitting something that I feel is not aligned with me and shifting to the next thing. I've done so many things that just have been such a good time. And so many things that like I thought this is gonna be the thing. This is gonna be the thing that gets me wealthy in this reality, but it hasn't been. And so I'm kind of taking the pressure off of what this what flower paper needs to be. And I'm having a good time. I'm creating characters. I love aliens. I am obsessed with aliens. So one of my first characters is Quincy, and he's an alien who got stranded here. He was traveling to different places. He was traveling the galaxy, and his ship broke down here. He didn't have any gas, and he's figured out a way now to convert stuff into the gas that he wanted that he needs it to be to travel. But he found community within the cannabis community. And so he's kind of been hanging out. He's been hanging out and just vibing. And so, like, the whole idea is just to be playful, to be fun, and give people a way to reimagine being.
Oh man, I love that again, so much. What I instantly thought of was, let's make cannabis fun again. Like that's why I joined the industry. And for myself, and I know for many others, it became not fun. It became very serious. It became just like every other industry. How do we make stuff for cheaper? How do we sell it for more? How do we like keep certain people from making money so we can make more? And it really kind of, I mean, it took the life out of me where I needed to take a short break. And the other thing that I really loved was just your ability to shift. And you even talked about like, oh yeah, I thought this next thing was gonna be like the thing that, that was gonna make me rich, or like the thing that like I could finally like say, this is what I'm doing. And in my life, I've experienced kind of like the same thing as you, which is like every few years, it's just like my spirit wanted something new. And for a while I thought, am I like kind of like jumping off of things before they have a chance to really like
Yeah.
proliferate? But when I really thought about it, and um, for a while I was coaching people on manifestation, was that we all believe that when we manifest the things that we want, we'll finally be happy. And one of the things that I realized in learning the law of attraction was that we don't manifest what we want, we manifest who we are. So if our happiness is conditional on something happening, like we're not happy right now until this happens, well, you're going to manifest some more unhappiness into your life. And then suddenly this trigger went off in my head, which was, oh, well, we want to manifest things to make us happy. But then if we're doing things that make us happy, we don't have to wait for something to happen in order to be happy. And to me, that is winning, And then so when I heard what you said, I think it's super important because a lot of the people that listen to me kind of have this professional background or know me from LinkedIn, is that the end goal never makes you happy. Like it may give you a temporary dopamine or serotonin boost, but if you're miserable this whole time until you hit that milestone, to me, that's like the biggest waste of a life, which is, just sacrificing, sacrificing, sacrificing. And one of the latest principles that's been coming to me is that, Sabo, in order for your consciousness to expand, you do not need to suffer. And I had always put
Mm.
like suffering, like the more that I suffer, the better I'm gonna feel when this happens. And now like there's this new framework of like, nah, that's just kind of like, maybe the Gary V's of the world, or I don't know, whoever these like grinders and hustlers that are famous, that's just a
Yeah.
story that they're telling, but there's another way. And I feel like how you're carrying yourself, how you're communicating is really giving people that data point of maybe we don't have to suffer in order to be happy and to have a successful business.
I think that's the message that if there's any message that would resonate, is it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be profound. It could be stickers, right? It could be whatever it is. But one of the things that you said earlier was that you had to stop thinking with your head and start thinking with your heart. I'm a person who has the opposite issue, right? I go full force. A lot of times I had like a woodworking business and I just went and bought a saw and I just started. And I had no idea I was making like these big, heavy wood art pieces. I was like, yeah, I'll sell them online. Did not think about the fact that how much is it going to cost to ship these things? And how do you build that? And had no idea. So now coming from working into cannabis accounting where things were so serious and you had to think about those things, it's helped me so much in this transition because I can think about these things from a business point of view, but also merge it with just the heart communication that I already have to 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 make something that hopefully will be successful, but at the bare minimum, I'll have a good time doing and I won't lose money on.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I am at this
Oh
point.
man, I really love that because I often talk about like really cultivating my more divine feminine within myself to become a more holistic human. And in many ways, I know that some more, I would say, macho or kind of like strong male personalities will reach out to me and they'll say some kind of like negative things or feel like I'm bashing men. And so I think what you said is really important, which is like, hey, like we have two hemispheres of our brain, the left and the right. They're responsible for different um, activities. And we wouldn't have been born with two of them if we weren't designed to leverage both. So, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes logical, rational, linear thinking is best. Like when I'm planning out like our finances for next year or our strategy, I think it's important to tap into that. But when I'm creating products, when I'm around my kids and my friends and my family, being more of this like experiential, present version of myself gains like it just is so much better for the experience. So, yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up kind of like how we started on opposite sides, but learned some skill sets that allowed us to become more holistic and to experience this world in a
Mhm.
better, brighter way. I think that's really important for people to hear so that it's not just like, "Oh, just be spiritual and everything will be okay." It's like, no, like spirituality is another tool that will allow us to integrate, or when we integrate that into our lives, will allow us to have a better experience of this. But it's not to say like, just do this and everything's going to be fine.
Absolutely. Everything in balance for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, just to wrap up, I always ask this question. Um, What is top of mind for Kenya Alexander to communicate to the world right now? What is the most important thing that you want them to hear? And if it's plugging your company, that's 100% okay.
The most important thing that I want people to know is that who you are is beautiful. You, as the most authentic version of yourself, is the most beautiful version of yourself, and it will attract the right people every single time. Even when it doesn't feel like it, you're setting it when you show up as yourself, you're setting yourself up to be able to show up as yourself even more. And so I guess if anyone takes anything away from this message, it's just to be your fucking self. Be your fucking self.
Yeah, that resonates deeply. That resonates deeply. Thank you for that. And if people want to support you, if people want to learn more about you, if people want to follow you, how do they find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, it's a life in the day of Kenya. It really my life, right? There's no theme. There's not, when you go to my page, expect there to be me. Expect there to be all the different versions of that's why I called it a life in the day of Kenya. I live so many lives in a particular day. So expect to see some of that stuff. You can follow my business page. It's Flower Paper, FLOWR paper. We actually got our stickers in recently. My daughter just woke up. We actually just got our stickers in recently, so we'll be dropping some new products on there. And definitely follow me on LinkedIn because that's the place I have been the most comfortable showing up as myself. So Kenya Alexander Davis on LinkedIn.
Ah, what beautiful
Say hi.
timing. Hello. How are you? I know she can't hear me, but what a beautiful face. Awesome.
This is Gummy. This is Keela.
Keela? Ah,
Uh
I
huh.
I I love this age. This is when you're the center of their universe, and I love seeing her smile.
She loves me so much. It's crazy.
Mm. Well, if you guys missed those links, I will definitely make sure I put them in the show notes. Kenya, this has been such a awesome conversation. I've been really trying to get more conversational than like interview like because I do feel like it's a more natural conversation there. So I'm so happy that you met me halfway and really I feel like you encouraged me to talk more about my spiritual beliefs and just putting it out there because, I have some hesitancy because how I perceived myself in the past, I don't know if this is true, is that a lot of people looked at me as a very like science-based hardware um, inventor of devices and just really sticking to the science. So, for me to kind of go onto the spiritual side of things, I feel like a bit of a jump. But, just being here with you, it just felt so natural to just say these things. So I really want to
Mhm.
acknowledge you for holding space for me to allow, more of my authentic truth to come out. And yeah, I hope that we could do many more of these. And if you want me on your show, I don't want to invite myself, but I'm more than happy to be on your show as well.
I would love that. And I just have to say one more thing before we wrap. I don't usually talk about myself and because it just has never felt comfortable. And you've always created a space that just feels safe for me to show up. And actually, I have a really hard time speaking sometimes. And I don't think that I had trouble saying exactly what was on my mind the whole time that we were talking. So I am beyond grateful for the presence that you've been in my life, the way that you've shown up for me as a friend. And just thank you so much for giving me the space. I really am so grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh man. Well, I'm so glad we're in each other's lives. If there's anything I could ever do, I'm a big fan and huge supporter. And, just wanted to thank you again. I mean, I had no idea, but thank you for sharing that. And I hope everyone listening had a wonderful time just kind of hearing us discuss what we're up to. And please, please follow Kenya. Please support her company. And I'll be back next week with another episode of the Silicon Valley to Spirituality Show. Thank you, Kenya.
Thank you, Sabo.